My guy, having been shoved away, stands here like this, gets the rest of his buddies together and start making plans to get her out of jail. Because she's going down to the 4th Avenue jail. We got to get some bond together, we need to call her parents, what are we going to do? Maybe we call a lawyer. We don't know about Marc Victor because we live out of state. Maybe they didn't say that, I don't know.
We've heard about Marc Victor because he's world renowned.
By the way, it wasn't like Shelton's case, which was the best thing ever, right? On videotape. Call Marc Victor! I lost that piece of video. It was the coolest thing ever. I had totally forgotten about it until we played the thing. He's getting arrested, he's getting in the police car, and it's, call Marc Victor! That was great, huh? We won that case at trial, too.
Oh, yeah.
That was a fun little story, too. But anyways, man, I got a lot of fun stories. So yeah, back to this story. So 5-10 minutes goes by, and they're talking in a circle, the rest of the 7 people, while the girl's getting carted off. And one of Sheriff Joe's finest, again, walks over in a very calm way, points to my guy, talking to the troublemaker Sheriff Joe guy, and says, is this the guy? Is this the guy right here? And the other guy says, yeah, that's him. Arrest him. He's the guy who assaulted me. My guy stands there and says, excuse me? I think you got the wrong guy. I never touched it or even raised my voice to anybody. Well, and the other sheriff's guy says, I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, but he's telling me to arrest you, and I got to arrest you. Put your hands behind your back. My guy puts his hands behind his back, and they start carting him off to the 4th Avenue jail for aggravated assault on a police officer. Bad story, huh? But then they start booking my guy into the jail. And they ask the routine booking questions. So what's your name? Okay. Where do you live? Okay. Where do you work? I'm a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And I work for the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
You're being terrorized.
There we go.
I'm sure the reaction of Sheriff Joe's finest at that moment was... So they booked him into the 4th Avenue jail, like everybody else, where he spent the evening till he went in front of the judge, and he was released OR, sent back to Vegas, where he was administered, put on suspension, an internal affairs investigation was started. He was appointed an attorney to represent him, who recommended several different lawyers, one of them being me, and he said to me that in 5 minutes after talking to me, he knew I was the guy. Because guess where I promised him we were going to end up?
Federal court.
So anyways, my mission is to him, and I've endeavored to try to prevent the charges in the first place. I've pulled one of these sort of Ernie Hancocks. Are you sure you want to play? And right now they're deciding whether or not they want to play. They may choose not to play, and it may become just a little quiet, happy ending for my guy, or they may choose to play, in which case, as Ernie would say, we're going to play. He has 6 sworn statements at this point, absolutely corroborating his version of events. He said to me, Mark, it was like an out-of-body experience. If you had told me that a police officer would have acted like that, would have said the things that he said, I would never have believed it had I not been standing right there and witnessed it for myself. I still can't believe it happened. He says, I'm a highly trained guy. I'm the last guy to get excited and to start pushing and shoving. I stood there, I remember every second of the thing. He wrote me a detailed explanation of exactly what happened. And I believe every word of his story, by the way. So,
What about the girl?
I don't know what happened with the girl yet. I think that's winding its way through the system.
What did the cops say? She's an official bad guy. What was his problem?
He's not charged yet, so I haven't done any interviews. We're really early in the case. All that's happened so far is they have decided not to file a complaint, so they had to vacate some of the early hearings. And the charging attorney has told me that they haven't made a decision yet about whether or not they're going to charge this guy. My guess they're gonna pass. But they may not, you never know, sometimes they surprise me. I hope they do pass because this guy's suffering. You know, he says, look, oh, I almost forgot to tell you the best part of the story.
Somebody had a camera.
I don't want to tell you his last name, but it's definitely Hispanic. Can you imagine how this is going to play? Can you imagine how this is going to play out? Anyways, I got to have a question or two.
Pull the records of the officer to see.
We're way too early for that. Yeah, we're way too early. Let's go in the back first, then up to the front. No, that's you.
Okay.
There was a Ninth Circuit.
No. Her, two behind you.
You know, the story that you're telling, we hear over and over again, we read about it in Freedom's Phoenix. What I want to know is, can we get the curriculum of the police academy? Because they all seem to be learning the same thing, and something is wrong at that level.
Well, I hear this kind of thing all the time. And, you know, there are times when people tell me these stories, and they're exaggerated. Sometimes they're flat lying to me, and sometimes they're telling me the absolute truth. But, and I never want to broad brush people or groups of people, and I never do. And so, you know, to be fair, there are a lot of good cops out there. Sometimes I do interviews on cases, and I walk out of there, and I think, wow, that's a good cop right there. That's good. That's a good guy. I hope this guy stays on the force a long time. And I'm happy when I hear that. And then there's other times I leave, and I think, wow, this guy has not only done this bad stuff to my client, I know he's done this 100 times before, and it needs to stop. Like this guy up at the Salt River, this isn't the first time he's acted like that. There's no doubt in my mind. So, if we do wind up going to federal court, and I hope we do, then I probably will bring a negligent training type of a case, which will then allow me to get all the records and the training and all that stuff. And, you know, he's of course going to deny the way he's acted, which probably 99 out of 100, see, here's what happens in these types of cases. The person gets charged with the Class 6, and then by the time they get to the prosecutor, they wind up getting a public defender or some attorney, they say, okay, we'll make you a deal to a misdemeanor or something like that. And the person says, well, I guess I don't want to really risk a felony, and it's expensive, and it's time-consuming, and I guess I'll just go away with a misdemeanor. So they take the misdemeanor, and they plead guilty to doing something wrong, maybe a disorderly or something like that, and the whole thing gets swept under the rug, and nothing happens. Because you can't go after the officer now, because the guy's admitted to being disorderly. So, you know, and he's never going to say, well, he's going to say, I acted just fine, and this guy up here, who's going to believe him? But this case is set up a little differently. And I think that the equities may be on my side in this case. Or actually, I'm pretty damn sure they are.
There's a Ninth Circuit case, I'm sure you're probably familiar with it, Durand versus the City of Douglas.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
This guy was a passenger.
Civil type case?
Huh?
It's a civil case of some type?
It's a civil rights violation against a police officer. A passenger was drinking in a car and saw a cop drive by, and he flipped the bird to the cop. So the cop pulled him over, stopped him, saw he'd been drinking, beat the crap out of the guy. Bottom line was he sued the cop, and the court said that you've got a First Amendment right to challenge the actions of a police officer.
Yeah.
What case is that?
It's called Durand versus the City of Douglas. It's a Ninth Circuit case. And I think I gave it to Terry Bressi when he had his...
And by the way, the Pastor Anderson, I don't know, the Pastor Anderson update, you guys remember the Pastor Anderson case? That turned out well. For those of you, you know, you guys have never met Vicki Lopez down in my office. Vicki's awesome. Yeah, well, I wanted to say something about Vicki first. I've gone through a lot of lawyers at my law firm. You know, lawyers are lawyers, and I'm generally not too impressed. I go through a lot of law clerks, too. And it's hard when you find a gem, somebody who's really got the passion to kick some ass. Somebody who gets worked up like I get worked up. Somebody who's a believer. And Vicki's just like that. Now, I know you're thinking a female, blah, 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 blah. Because, yeah, I gotta tell you the truth. Most, in my opinion, most female defense attorneys and judges, they just don't quite come off right. If they're too tough, oh, they're bitchy. And if they're not tough, well, they're just too timid. It's sort of hard to kind of walk that line in the right spot. Vicki Lopez hits it right on the mark, in my view. And so this was a tough call for me because I had been fighting Pastor Anderson's case the entire time, and it's been a fun fight. I mean, if you look at any of the videos, my
Yeah.
cross-examination of the Border Patrol, yeah, it's hilarious. Every time I walk out of it, I thought, wow, this was fun. The whole thing was set up, it was great, great case, loved it, loved it, loved it. But it got set for trial, and I could have continued it, so I could have had more time, and I could have gone down there and prepared it. But I wanted to hold their feet to the fire, so I didn't continue it, and they were pressed for time, and I wasn't exactly sure they were going to get their witnesses and everything together. But I couldn't do it. And so I thought about bringing Vicky in, and the thing that tipped the scale for me was Vicky's the one doing the civil rights case for Pastor Anderson. If you don't remember the 1-minute summary of Pastor Anderson, no priors, no problems, generally pretty cool, calm, collected guy. Pastor Anderson pulls into the checkpoint down in Yuma, and they say that the dog alerted, and that's complete BS. And you know, really, you should watch the cross-examination of the Border Patrol guys. It's obscene. It's so ridiculous, some of the things that they said. But long story short, Pastor Anderson eventually winds up saying to the DPS guy, hey, have him bring the dog back, and if he alerts, you know, fine, bring him back. Let's see if he alerts. And DPS guy says, that's pretty reasonable. So he goes to Border Patrol and says, hey, will you guys just run the dog back? I mean, the guy's saying, let him alert. He does the right thing. Let's try to defuse the situation, right? And they say, no, we're not doing that. So Pastor Anderson just sits in his car. He really has no choice because they drop stop sticks in front of him. He refuses to go to secondary initially. So he's sitting in the car, and it's a 1-hour standoff where he's not getting out of the car, and he can't leave anyway, and they don't know what to do with the guy. So what do they decide to do here in America, the land of the free?
Incarcerated.
They smash both of his front windows, the passenger side, the driver's side, they smash both windows simultaneously, and the guy standing on the passenger side pulls out his taser where he blasts the peacefully sitting Pastor Anderson twice for a total of 18 consecutive miserable, torturous seconds. And then they take Pastor Anderson's head, having not inflicted enough aggravation on misery on the guy, they take his head and they smash it into the jarred glass on the passenger side, creating a perfectly outlined, jarred, bloody outline of Pastor Anderson's head in the door. They then open the door, drag him out, throw him on the ground, and according to Pastor Anderson, because it's slightly outside the videotape of the entire incident, they beat him. They kind of boot him to his head. Pastor Anderson eventually does a video shortly after the incident where you can see the guy looks like he's been through, you know, Baghdad or something. He's beat pretty good. So Vicky went down and tried the case and kicked ass just like I knew she would, and we got a not guilty as to both counts, keeping our really good, long not guilty streak alive. We've had some pretty good success lately on both motions to suppress and trials. And so now, Pastor Anderson walks out of there completely exonerated of the charges, and we're sitting in federal court where the attorneys on the other side are wondering, boy, what are we going to argue? Because we're going to come in and say, Pastor Anderson did nothing wrong, didn't break the law in any way, and here's what he got for his, here's what happened to him. What's that worth? I don't know. But I don't know, maybe that should go in front of a jury. That'll be Pastor Anderson's call. But you know, I'll just put this other little plug for Pastor Anderson. We don't agree on everything, but in my opinion, that guy's a pretty good American.